Hello, I'm Anthony, one of the Woden boys.
I'm Vaughn, the other of the Odin boys, and this is the second part of the Odin's Beard podcast where we will be talking about Hiro Watanabe. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Watanabe.
Watanabe. Okay, I suck with Japanese names. Alright, we're just going to dive right into it. No need for a real big intro or anything.
Yep.
As I did with mine, and as we always do, first off, visualize the character. Let people know who they're thinking about while we talk about it.
What age do you want him at?
Just show them childhood all the way to prime.
Well, the main two phases that you really see him in is when he's in his teenage life and when he's in his later years where he's a bit more, I guess I would say, gritty.
Yeah.
When he's younger, he's very wild looking. He loves having a ton of colors. He loves having all sorts of different flares to him. He's got very messy hair. He wears these goggles around his neck as well as a bandana because what he'll do is they're welding goggles. He'll wear them over his eyes, and the bandana is usually to protect from the fumes. And he's got tattered but not bad looking clothes, but he's always very wild. And he's got when it comes to his face, he's Japanese, but
No, I thought he was Saudi Arabian.
oh no, I thought he was an Inuit, but he's got a sharper jawline to him with a sort of pointed chin, but not. It still looks kind of soft, despite that. Like maybe like a spoon, I guess I would say.
Where do you describe it, man?
But and he's got a cute little nose, and he's got large, like honey brown eyes, and these mischievous eyebrows, and he's got a face that always seems to be in a natural smirk or smile. And he's got a chipped tooth.
Are they honey brown like Azzies, or just honey brown in general? Azzies are such a deep golden honey brown.
No, they're more of a
More on the darker side than the lighter side?
Yeah, they're more on the darker side.
I just wanted to differentiate those two
The only time
physical characteristics.
it's whereas Azzies would shine like a golden wolf, if you put his eyes under the right light, it would be more like a soft amber glow.
Okay. And the second phase of his life?
In the second phase of his life, well, actually, one thing I forgot to mention is, in his younger phase, he's quite short. He's only about 5'6". He's a string bean. He's a string bean, but he's really lanky, and he's actually very wiry too. Despite being so small, he's got a good build to him, but that's because he's always lifting machine parts.
Yeah.
Like he'd be the type of guy that he's only 120 pounds until he walks up and deadlifts a 200-pound machine part, and it's like,
Well then.
okay, little man. And in his later years, he's a bit taller and stockier. He stops growing at around 5'9". He's not incredibly tall. Yeah. But he's a little bit more heavy set. He fills out a lot more. And but he keeps a little bit of a dusting of some facial hair. Not too much though. Think dandy boy, and there you go. And but the most notable thing of when he's older is he goes through a very dark time, and he gets a nasty scar that goes down the side of his face right about here, and it starts here up at like just above the eyebrow, and it comes down past his cheek and ends here just above the jaw.
So now that we know what it looks like, and now that we know that, where does he come from? Where did he grow up as a kid, and how does his environment as an early kid to early teens shape him as he is as a person?
Okay, there's some things about his childhood that are rough, but he had a relatively happy childhood up until a certain point, and then it resumed to being sort of a happy childhood. This sounds brutal, but his father was a mechanic that ran in a junkyard, and his mother was the Japanese equivalent of a lot lizard. So that's fun. But when Hiro was born, he was immediately taken in by his father, and his mother just kind of ran off on him. But it didn't affect his life in a horrible, tragic way. What it was his father was very devoted to him. He made sure he went to school, but at the same time, when he first got Hiro, he realized that he was a very, very bright child. his father actually felt inadequate to teach him because he was so talented. He picked up on things that when he was 13 and first got into mechanics, his father did. He took weeks, whereas Hiro at 6 years old was able to pick up on things within a matter of days.
So as with my character Azure, he's sort of a golden child, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what he always did was, he lived in a junkyard, so he would find a random car and he would make all these Frankenstein vehicles with his father, and it'd always be the dumbest shit. Like, oh my god, one thing he did was he took a little Toyota Corolla and he thought it was a great idea to put a 500 horsepower engine in a giant 4x4 set of wheels that looked like they belonged on a Jeep.
Good God.
And then he drove that thing to school when he was 10 years old, mind you. He got arrested, obviously. And when he got brought back home to his father, the first thing his dad says is, What do you think you were doing?" He just looks him dead in the eye. "I was just taking it out for a test spin." "A test spin?" "Yeah, a test spin. I tested how many donuts I could make it run on." And he goes, and he was just so fed up with his son in that moment. So fed up.
Okay, but so we have that, but how did it shape him?
Hiro's an incredibly creative and inventive person. He always loves to tinker. He always loves to have fun, go through life, and have a good time. But he's the equivalent of, whenever something goes wrong, I just came here to have a good time, and I'm honestly feeling so tacked right now. And from that, going through that with his dad, it really helped him become a very positive person. Even without his mother, he was given enough love from his dad to account for having two parents.
So this question has already pretty much been answered with your answer in the second question. Who was he closest to in his family?
Obviously his father.
Okay, now that question has been answered and pretty much explained through your explanation through the second question. So my next question is, did he have any other family members to relate to? Did he have any family members to talk to other than his father? I'm sure his dad had to have some family.
He actually did. His father had a brother. It was his uncle. And his uncle's family was a very, very, very busy family, I guess I would say.
Why were they busy? Make them busy.
You ever knew what it was like to have 9 cousins come over? 9. All from him. All of them.
So, like, Mexican cousins came to visit you, basically.
Basically. So, Hiro, that's where a lot of Hiro's very manic energy comes from, too, is because he grew up with many, many family member children coming over, and they were always just so wild. And, of course, whenever they came over, they wanted to get into Hiro's new vehicle, and it wasn't always a good time for them.
Okay, so out of those cousins, did he have one that he was closest to, or was he just close to all of them in general?
The one he was closest to would have to have been the youngest.
What was his name?
It was actually a girl.
Oh, okay, what was her name? My bad.
I know what you're thinking. It doesn't go down a dark path. Please don't.
We're not in Mississippi, guys. It's okay.
She was the youngest, and she had a lot of insecurity. And one thing that...
Sorry, we were interrupted by pussy.
Oh, yeah. And one thing about that is, Hiro is very positive and he loves to help people. If he sees you're struggling, he wants to be right at your side and drive you forward, whether it be with a helping hand or a boot to your back, honestly.
So, again, another similarity with my character, Azure. He just wants to help people. He's very selfless.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue to explain his relationship with the cousin.
She was basically the kicked puppy when it came to the family members. And it was because she was incredibly insecure and she had a lot of problems with other kids in school because she was born with a club arm, and that got her picked on a lot. She caught a lot of flack, and Hiro was always the one that was at her side, trying to protect her, trying to help, and he actually helped her learn that she had talent. She was useful, she was intelligent, and when it comes to raw intelligence, out of those cousins, she was actually the brightest despite having that missing arm, and he helped bring out a lot of good in her.
That's a really sweet thing, just to bring out that good thing in someone. And I don't really think that just missing an arm or having a club arm, as Hero believes, most assuredly, I don't think that necessarily makes you less than anybody. It doesn't make you any less brighter or any less talented in any other way.
One thing Hero used to say to her all the time: from the stuff I do, I could be missing an arm tomorrow, and no one will ever think I'm any dumber for it. And that's exactly what he'd always tell her when it came to that. And
no matter what limbs you miss, your mind will always remain no matter what, unless you go through some kind of specific trauma.
Honestly, he was very lucky not to have lost limbs.
Alright, so who are his best friends throughout all of life? Throughout all of his life, we obviously know his little cousin is a very good friend of his, so who are his other best friends throughout the entirety of his life?
He made one good friend in school when he was younger, and it was this other little boy, and the kid was very bright too. He wasn't, a lot of people weren't to Hero's level, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But the kid found Hero so incredibly interesting, even though Hero was actually bullied very heavily for being so strange. He caught a lot of flack for bringing shit to school. He was always tinkering at his desk. He would be trying his best to make a pencil crossbow and firing it at people. And granted, he made sure the tip was rounded. Not that makes it much better.
It still hurts.
But the friend helped him be more secure in his identity, because there was times where Hero's identity as having fun and stuff like that was challenged. His optimism a lot of times was challenged. But that friend helped support him to help him stay as he was, and it was a really sweet thing that friend did for him. But and I won't tell the name because I want to keep the name of that friend to myself, and the good reason of that is because if I ever write the story, I want people to learn who it is.
Yeah.
But
does he have any other best friends throughout his life other than that guy?
There's Azure, of course. The only other person that can stay in the, I feel like his word salad would mix with Hero's manic very easily.
The two would have an easier time communicating with one another than they do with normal people.
Yeah, they'd probably be speaking in Mach 9 at all times.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to consider, the two are very intelligent compared to one another. Their raw intelligence is awe-inspiring, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's obviously a very focal point for the both of them to communicate with on. But they also share a lot of same internal struggles, which I think leads to an even stronger friendship. That's sort of the hidden friendship of Azure. It's not really necessarily talked about all the time, but that is one cornerstone of his life. And is it like that with Hero at all, or?
I'm sure. I'm not saying I'm sure it is. It is that way. As he helps him with a lot of things, especially later in his life.
Yeah, especially when what goes down, goes down.
But the reason why he bonds so much with Emma, Belle, and Azzy, those are the main friends in his life, is Hero deals with a lot of government bodies going after him, because a lot like Azure, people see his intelligence as willing to create a very large thing that he makes that I'll get into later, that is sought out by lots of government bodies.
Okay.
Gets him landed on a beach half alive, and they save him from that.
You were mentioning Emma before I interrupted you. She's the only one that can hold up a candle to really, as you are the friend from high school.
Yeah.
Why were you about to mention Emma? How is she a friend to him? How is she?
Well, she's much more than a friend.
We're not getting into that quite yet. I just want to know, before they become more, how does she as a friend hold a candle to what him and Azure have, or him and his high school guy have?
Well, she, like Hero, has a lot of manic energy. She's always running at 110%, 3,000 miles an hour. She's basically almost like a manic pixie dream girl, except feed her about 10 pounds of raw sugar. And they do a lot of adventuring. They do a lot of time to where they're just having fun, doing some crazy shit, and it makes them bond very well.
just a quick shout out to our special friends. She, the one who also made Belle, also made Emma.
Yep, because they're siblings.
And so, we, again, just another toss out to our special friend there for making these wonderful characters for us to play with. So, now that we know his best friends throughout all of life, tell me about his enemies. Who does he encounter that are his greatest external enemies?
Okay, well, the thing about Hero is he doesn't have many individual enemies. What he mainly deals with is government bodies trying to either shut him down, steal him away, or steal what he owns. So what it first starts out with is the Japanese government, because Hero loses his father, which is a very tough thing for him to deal with.
Very dark point.
And a machine that he and his father worked together to make is a very great and powerful, dangerous machine that is sought out all over the world. And the thing is,
quick thing for his machine, it's not an AT-AT from Star Wars, but it is a similar make and build. It's not an exact representation or copy. That's just the best thing that we can give you for a decent representation. She has a picture somewhere that we'll tag into the video.
Yeah, I'll get into it more later. But the thing about it is he deals with a lot of governments. The first is the Japanese government. He gets ran out of the country to the point where he's spending every day just trying to survive. He wants to stay home because he's got his friends. He wants to stay home because he's got his cousins. And he wants to stay home because all of what he remembers about his dad's in that junkyard among those wrecked cars.
Yeah.
But it gets to a point where all he can do is run. And all he can do is evade the authority. And he does, but he gets stranded out in the ocean and he almost dies from dehydration and stuff. And he rolls up on the American Sea. And that's how he meets Emma, Belle, and Azzy. And he also deals with the American government, of course, because...
Of course. Azzy deals with them on a daily basis.
As I've already said, this kid's kind of chaos incarnate in some ways, which gets him in a lot of trouble. He doesn't always think, hey, this can get me arrested. No, he thinks, cool, I want to make this explode.
Sounds like somebody I know.
And, of course, that gets him in a lot of trouble with American authorities, but he manages to evade them for the most part because he's very good at diverting attention, and so is his friend Azure at the time, which helps him with that. Yeah. But later in his life, he disappears without a trace, and it's because he actually does get tracked down by paramilitary, and he's taken out into the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert, where he's taken there to be interrogated, and they also steal his machine, and they try to force him to create new things through all sorts of terrible means, like torture, you name it. They put him through so many things to make him obedient. They put him through so many things to where he was nothing more than a robot to give them what they wanted. Yeah. And that was just the next machine, the next weapon, the next tool.
Right. And so they're basically his biggest enemy is that paramilitary group.
The biggest one is that paramilitary by far.
Okay. So, and we already had this conversation about how that entire process goes and how the fallout with Belle, Azzy, and Emma goes when Azzy realizes that he can't track Hero down anymore.
It's a very sad moment for him because he comes back and he's just as broken as he was when he washed up on those American shores. He's back to being a shell of his former self, but of course he comes back. Don't worry.
Don't worry. Okay, so with that, with you saying that, with you making the mention that he comes back just as broken as he was when he washed up on the beach when Emma and Belle first found him, tell us about the inner struggles that he deals with throughout his time as a young adult and how he conquers both them and the people he comes up against, the American government and the paramilitary. You can actually go into more detail about the paramilitary group because you already mentioned about the American government, how he got away from them.
Okay, well, the main internal struggles that he deals a lot with, he feels like he's a huge burden on anyone that's around him because he knows he's chaotic, he knows he's fucking nuts, and he has a real hard time dealing with he acts very optimistic, but he has lots of moments where he's feeling really down. But he tries his very best to remain as that joking, manic, crazy kid, and he does. There's hardly ever a time that his super cheery and energetic, I can't think of the word for that, his demeanor ever falters. It's very rare to see him ever actually act depressed. But keeping that optimism up is difficult, especially with the things he goes through. He doesn't have exactly an easy life.
Of course he doesn't.
And it's...
I mean, not having an easy life is a common thing amongst this asshole's characters. He is one of the most sadistic people I know when it comes to character backstories. He writes such depressing shit that we literally, like us and the people he writes with, have to tell him, Anthony, it's okay to be happy. You don't have to be sad all the time.
But the 2 moments where he's broken like he was, those are really, really significant parts where it is times where his optimism falters, because when he first washed up on those shores, he was completely dehydrated. He was literally a husk. He looked like a corpse. They thought he was dead when they found him until he coughed up a fish.
Yeah.
That he tried to eat raw, and he couldn't even chew it. And he ends up getting nursed back to health, and he slowly slips back into that crazy kid. But he felt abandoned. He felt thrown away. He felt like he was hunted and hated.
What's really awesome about the group of characters that we have in this moment is, as you said, he feels thrown away. He feels like nobody wants him. He's just a big burden. But he's accepted with such big open arms to Belle, Emma, even as he accepts him with open arms, despite his own paranoia with, oh, this guy might be out here to get me, he might be here to get me. But after the first few seconds go by, he realizes he's not. So Hero is accepted by these people that he doesn't even know. He has no idea who these people are, but they are there for him from day one. And there's constant support system. They nurse him back to health, and even afterwards, they constantly push for the best out of him because they just want to see that potential in him grow.
Yeah.
Which is really how a family should be, in my mind.
Exactly. And another thing he deals with a lot is he has a hard time coming to grips at times with the loss of his father.
Right.
And the biggest thing that helps him drive forward is the machine. Its name is Forerunner. It's a very large machine that they work on together, and his dad died while they were working on it. He tried to keep himself strong, and he wanted to finish it with Hero as his final project. But before he died, he told him, "It's all on you, kid. I'm sorry, I can't do it." And the reason for it is he had a very bad form of lung cancer. So Hero finished the project. It was his final moment with his dad. And
sorry, another
second.
pussy problem.
It was his final project with his father, and it means a lot to him because of that. He worked on the code with Hero, he worked on the machining of the parts, and because at the time, mind you, Forerunner was a bit beyond what he was capable of, and it wasn't so much, he didn't have the talent or anything. When they first started it, Hero was only 9 years old, and it was finished when he was 12.
Since you're getting a little bit back on topic, I'm going to bring you right back. So you mentioned the inner struggles. Real quick, tell them the second time about when he was broken, what he was like then, so they have a quick understanding.
The thing about Hero, and this sounds like it's real harsh, but the torture he went through in some ways actually messed up his head in a way that's a little sad, but he ends up coming back from it pretty well, because little Azzy knew just how to... He was just like, your brain's messed up? Boy,
let me tell you some shit right now.
But what happened was, he was interrogated brutally, he was tortured, all sorts of things. And there were some damages literally to his brain, a lot of damages to his body, and he was left as a husk as he was on those shores because they starved him, they dehydrated him, they did everything they could to break the kid, but he wouldn't break, he wouldn't tell them a word, he wouldn't make them anything. He was so incredibly stubborn. so incredibly stubborn. And it kind of was his downfall in that moment because again with the machine, he could make another Forerunner. He could make a machine better than it at that point of his life. And he does, because he adds on a lot to it. There's a lot of, I won't get into it. But because of how he felt about that work, he was super, super hard on not giving them a damn thing. And by the time he's found, he's got damage from truth serums, he's got damage from all sorts of things. They waterboarded him. I won't get into it. It's bad. It's real bad. He was dealt with in a very cruel way. And he was gone for about 1.5 years, actually. A very long time to be in that sort of environment, and that's why he's so physically messed up.
A quick note, the people that he lived with are looking for him the entire time he's gone, mind you. I just want to add that quick note in there.
And, but when he comes back, he does bounce back.
Okay, that's the next part. How does he defeat both the paramilitary group, and how does he defeat these inner struggles that he deals with on a daily basis? We know he has a little help from Azzy, but...
Well, they made the mistake of allowing him near a radio transmitter because they thought they finally broke him. What they didn't know is that Forerunner had a safeguard in place to where if he pressed a certain frequency, the machine went on a sort of berserk mode, and that ended up being the big thing that kind of literally blew a hole in their little organization, their little military base they had going at the time, and that's what sort of signaled, hey, I'm here. Because it didn't just blow the place up. Forerunner also let out a high-frequency alarm, all sorts of stuff.
Which Azzy would have been very easy to pick up on.
And that's what got him out. He wasn't able to do anything physically because he was nothing but a husk at that point, and he still managed to think, hey, I can do this to escape. He did what he could to trick them despite being as broken as he was when he washed up on those shores. And that's one thing that's really amazing about him is even in his worst, horrible state, he manages to sort of keep on what he needs to do.
So he activates that, and Azzy and Emma and Belle come to find him from the location then, and they carry him out, or something along those lines, right?
Yep, and the sad part about that is Forerunner in its berserk
destroys himself.
Yep.
And it's something that him and his father worked on, so it's a very personal blow to him because it's the last piece of his father. It's the last materialistic piece. Now all he has is memory and code. He doesn't have an actual piece of his dad's.
Yeah, and the thing about that is he was in a way sort of glad at first because he would much rather it blows itself up than ends up in their hands.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was a lot for him. But how he bounces back is he just kept on things. He engineered his own medications with the help of Azure to fix the damage caused by the true serums. He doesn't completely remain the same person, of course.
Yeah. He has lingering effects as any person would, no matter the medical treatments or the therapy.
He meant it, but he becomes a bit more cautious, a little bit more thought out, a lot less just random, crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so now we get into what I told you to hold back on earlier. We know he falls in love with Belle. I mean,
not Belle. I mean, he loves her like a sister.
Belle is Azzy's. Azzy's and Azzy's alone. We know he falls in love with Emma.
Please don't make this a cliche harem.
No, it's not. Belle, it belongs to Azzy. Azzy would literally end up killing Hero. No, not really, but
he would
get very defensive.
You get him like stranded in Jamaica for a week or something.
Yes, just to know that's my Belle. But anyway, we know he falls in love with Emma. So why? And basically, just give me the how.
Well, when it comes to Hero, a lot of people don't see him past the super manic, crazy boy. Yeah. And she brings that out a lot in him, but they also end up forming a relationship because, well, she's one of the very, very few people that treat him like a normal human being. Yeah. And he was able to relate to her on a personal level, and they grew upon a lot of their adventures, always just having fun, and they're also supportive of one another. Emma went through her own issues, and Hero was always there to try and back her up. Yeah. Which, of course, he would. He's a very sweet kid.
He's a very sweet, supportive person.
Exactly. And there's times where she had to bail him out of jail, all sorts of stuff. and they just grew to love one another, even though they seem to be 1 second yelling at one another or over something ridiculous, or 1 second doing something stupid to where both Azzy and Belle were like, "You're gonna die."
Just shut up, please. We're trying to sleep. But
but she was his partner in crime.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how they got together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so beyond inventions, beyond creating Forerunner, beyond all the intelligence he has, what does he desire most out of the life that he lives, beyond running from governments and making sure nothing falls into their hands? What does he want most when it comes to breathing?
What Hero actually desires most is he wants a creative freedom for everybody, including himself. He believes that everyone in the world is stifled. He believes that everyone in the world is held back from the thing they love to do in some way, shape, or form, including himself, despite how hard he pursues the things he loves. And he wishes for a world to where he can make it to where everyone can do the things they love. Of course, it's highly idealistic. It's highly unrealistic.
It doesn't work in practical thought.
It doesn't work in practical thought, but
that would be such random bullshit. Oh my good God!
But he wants it very deeply. He wishes he could achieve it,
right.
Even though it's not something that could realistically happen. Even in his later years, where he's a bit more grounded, he's still very hard set on, you need to pursue the thing you want to do.
Yeah, so basically the thing he desires most out of life for himself and for everyone else is just creative freedom.
Yeah.
The ability to create whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, he wants you to invent, he wants you to do that painting, he wants you to write that song, he wants you to draw that thing.
Yeah.
He wants you to make that food.
Okay, so now we get into something we never really talk about when it comes to our characters, and something you didn't even include in Azzy's thing. Does he have any religious beliefs? Any kind of religion? It doesn't have to be organized religion. Any kind of spiritual beliefs whatsoever.
Well, actually, for the most part, he really, really does not care. But he actually does believe in some of the old Japanese gods. He follows the one. Amaterasu is the main one he likes to follow along, and but he doesn't care enough to really get into it too heavily. He's not a devout religious person.
Okay, so a quick thing: does he get into following him, or does he just like the mythology of said god? Because you could like the mythology of said god, but not necessarily follow the beliefs or code of that said god put forth. Despite the fact I have no knowledge of this god.
He believes in the gods, but like I said, he doesn't care enough to really put forth an effort. Like, that's the gods he believes in.
Give me 3 of his top creations, and I know what the first one is. So
obviously it's Forerunner.
Obviously.
What it is it's this giant bipedal machine, but it can also sort of condense itself down into a buggy if it needs to be more mobile and quick. But this thing is destructive. It's ridiculous in that it's just in your face, and it's got a 30 millimeter cannon, a 20 millimeter auto gun. It's got a couple of missile launch.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous, and it's funny because he hardly ever uses the weapons. He doesn't even use it on people at all. He just likes to blow stuff up. He's like, you see that tree over there? Yeah.
Katooey.
I'm gonna shoot it with a 30 millimeter cannon. Let's watch it explode. Yeah. But the thing about Forerunner is, while it starts off as just this big old bipedal machine, and it just ridiculous. What he does is over time he adds on to it, and he makes it to where it's modular. He can change the legs to where it becomes like a big jet ski machine, even though it can float in water without that, because it's got like an emergency life raft function to it, but it's not nearly as good as the jet ski legs that you can put on the big bastard. He adds things like the main things that come off are the legs. And there's some that he can add that make it to where it's able to fly. There's other things that he adds on, different weapons, different utilities, different machines, tools. He makes it to where it's his go-to ride I don't know how or any other way to put it, to go almost anywhere.
Okay.
And he also, it's got a very advanced coding to where it acts like I don't even know. It's like a pet.
Yeah, it's like a pet. Okay, so next. Two more.
The next is this. He was able to create a very advanced. They're like these weird pots, and what they're meant is actually for subterranean travel. Of course, you'd probably think, hey, why didn't he just put that on, make something like that for Forerunner? But the thing is, this thing can move a lot faster underground than Forerunner ever possibly could, because what it is on one end, it's covered in these sort of, there are these weird vibrating, like, rollers almost, but what they do is they roll in and they vibrate at a very high speed and frequency, and it sort of grinds away whatever is in the front of it. And of course, you're probably asking how often does he have to replace those, yada yada yada. But what they are is magnetic, so where whenever it comes across any metal in the earth, it helps self-replenish him. He does still have to replace them from time to time, of course. But what it does is it'll grind away whatever is in front of it, and it ejects it out the other side to sort of be able to propel itself at a pretty high rate of speed. And for the more tough materials, like say he ran into granite, he ran into a steel, there's not steel deposits, but an iron ore deposit or things like that. What it can also do is, as it grinds it away, it will take the material and like power blast it back at it,
right.
kind of like a sandblaster, and that helps you get it through the more tougher areas. It's got an extremely high pressure and heat resistance, and it almost looks like a little escape pod. Plop it on the ground, it's small enough for you to actually carry, well, as long as you can lift about 110 pounds.
Okay, and next?
The next is he deals a lot with energy too, because there's a lot of things that, with all his mechanical work, there's a lot of different energy needs. And whereas Azzy does it with a botany sort of thing.
One of the things that Azzy dives into. Again, there's a lot of inventions I have to pick out from, he has to pick out from.
Yeah, it's really hard to narrow it down. But one thing that he actually made is, it's a sort of weird generator slash, it also makes a weird energy field, and what it does is he could put it down on a machine, and it both works as a shield and a producer of energy, to where sometimes it can protect, but at the same time it'll act like a secondary generator. It's not powerful enough for most of his large machines. It works for the smaller machines, but it doesn't fit the same purpose when it comes to that. And what it is an energy field that combusts oxygen, and it uses that energy to sort of make a protective layer, but the combusted oxygen also is used as a supplementary energy to fuel whatever it is on. He's made large ones for Forerunner, he's made little ones for cars, bikes, motorcycles. If it's something you can ride, chances are he can slap it on there. And it can protect from ballistics, it can actually soften impacts, say you get in a car crash. It's a very, very versatile and useful sort of invention, and that's why it's one of his more notable things, because he uses it a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So as you asked with Azzy, where's his favorite place to go?
His favorite place to go, which it may sound strange, is the beach he washed up on.
Because
that's as broken and shambled as he was when he arrived there. That's where he met some of the most important people in his life, and it helps him think of good times, because he goes there and he goes, this is where some of my greatest adventures started. He loves the sound of the crashing waves. He loves, even though it's covered in garbage, he loves looking at the sand and seeing the grimy sea. It's kind of funny, because he sits there and he looks like he's looking at it like it's a picturesque view, like it's so beautiful, like it's something you'd see in a brochure, and it's like
disgusting and gross.
It's like,
it looks like Chicago on a beach,
basically. Like it's pretty bad, but he still loves it anyway. So,
to break a little bit of the normal cheery stuff we're going here, normally when people think about characters, they only think about the things that make sense for the characters. For Marvel characters, what makes most sense for Iron Man? What makes most sense for Captain America? So, going outside of what's normal for a character, does he ever do anything that breaks who he is as a person that goes outside of who people think Hero is.
As you guys both have probably already gathered, Hero is very carefree, he's very kind, he's very forgiving, and he generally doesn't ever seem to like, it takes a lot to get Hero to focus on a goal and get him to actually make a set plan. But one of the things that causes him to break that character is he comes across a very, very dark group of people with very, very nefarious purposes. And I will not get into what they do because it's not PG-13. It really is not.
Right.
And it disturbed Hero to the point where he got angry. He got legitimately angry. He completely dropped his cheerful demeanor, and he got serious, very, very serious, to where he got focused on a goal, and he set up a large-scale plan to take them down. And it was leadership skills and all sorts of other things you would never expect to see out of him, but he is actually very capable of doing due to his intelligence and creativity.
Right.
And he does, and even more surprising to see out of Heroes, there's even some people that end up dead from him taking that group down, and you wouldn't expect Hero to be capable of that, but even Hero has this point where he's like, no, you need to leave this world.
Yeah. Which is something, you never think of that when you think of either Azor or you think of Hero, two incredibly optimistic people, very cheerful, very hopeful for the world that they live in.
Yeah.
You never think of them taking a life.
Yeah.
As he does it for love, and Hero surprisingly doesn't do it out of love. He does it just out of pure raw anger.
Yeah.
Okay, so to end,
which, like, it's, you think of Hero and you think the optimistic, cheerful little guy, and to see him actually get angry, it's honestly very, very scary.
I can imagine how you never think of the happy people being mad or angry.
And it's that when the happy people break that they get the most
dangerous. They're dangerous, right?
Because those inhibitions are gone.
Yeah. Okay. So to close this out, instead of ending on a sad note with his death, I want to focus on the things he did while he was alive. We talked a lot about what Hero's done as he alive. We talked about a lot of struggles, a lot of enemies, and the family that he finds himself in. But beyond every single one of those achievements, beyond all of that, beyond what he creates, what is the one greatest accomplishment you have that is considered great from your perspective?
He does a lot of, it sounds crazy, but he does a lot of large-scale deeds, but he hates taking responsibility for it. He hates being the hero. He hates being the one that everyone knows, hey, you did this great thing. And there's one thing where there was people in a space station that he heard about to where the power had cut out. And he found a way to get up there and give them a generator just for them to live. But he made sure his identity was completely anonymous as he did it. So everyone hears about this random man that showed up in space and gave them a generator and just left. No one knows who he is or who he did. There's another time where he will just randomly show, like, he acts like a superhero. It's kind of hilarious. He showed up at a whole problem with the Coast Guard where there was a sinking ship and there were some people stranded on an island. He helped get them home. There's the with the paramilitary group, one thing that he had noticed as soon as he had gotten in there was a lot of people that were forced to be there. There was a lot of people that it's a very dark place. And even though he knew that it would get him put in a lot of hot water, possibly killed, he went out of his way to make sure he could save as many people as possible from that place. Even when this is how in depth his planning gets when he actually can sit down and think. When he knew he was eventually going to have to make Forerunner go berserk to escape, he made a note to basically make it to where when he did that radio transmitter, it may be like, oh, he didn't have time to do it, but the radio transmitter was just to send the frequency or the codes. Hero knows the code like the back of his hand. So every little thing that you can think of to where, how would he tell it to do this? How would he tell it to do that? He's got specific commands he can give. And
so while you mentioned earlier it was berserk, it wasn't completely berserk, and then it targeted every single living thing.
he couldn't make it be completely perfect in how it targeted because he could only give a few more of the broader things because you can't list every little detail.
Yeah, especially when it's just supposed to be a short amount of code and they're watching him like a hawk.
Yeah, and what he did was he basically made it to where anyone that wore a certain color uniform, because it was color coordinated place, that was a fuck up in their part. And he made sure to where it only attacked people wearing certain colors. And it saved a lot of people. And that's all he really cared about in that moment, is that even if he didn't make it out of there, he wanted to make sure that the others did. He does a lot of really selfless, ridiculous acts, and he doesn't tell he doesn't even tell Azzy, he doesn't tell Bella, he doesn't tell Emma, never even told his high school friend. He went out of his way to make sure that he did that great thing, that sweet thing, but he hated, he just, for some reason, just hates
the attention.
Yeah.
That's understandable. And with that, that's the final one for this evening. We will...
Yeah, thanks for listening, and if you got this far...
Great job. Every time we get to this point, if you've watched both videos to in their entirety, just thank you so much for listening to us rant about our characters.
Yeah.
Just our imaginations, really. It's we can't express how wonderfully happy we are to have y'all support.
Yeah, because there's not many people I can always just go on and talk about my characters, and I ramble a lot.
Same here.
Sometimes you have to put a ball gag in my mouth just to get me to shut up about him.
Or to make him horny. It depends on which.
But
I think with that we should be done. Stop boring people.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you drop a like and a subscription below, and make sure to tune in on Monday or Tuesday, depending on when we're going to get it done, to check out our next 2 wacky videos we got coming for you. Later, my dudes.
Bye.